Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the White Album 2 bonus novel, The Snow Melts and Until It Falls Again. So, basically on the last chapter, Kazusa was still kind of getting over that phone call with her mom, where her mom said she wasn't going to be able to keep her promise and come see her, and it's been a year and a half. After that phone call, she couldn't sleep for, at this point now, it's been about 48 hours. So she decided to go to the school and actually talk to Haruki, who she knew had been the one playing the guitar next door all along. Then she went ahead and gave him that guitar lesson that he wouldn't stop talking about later on in an introductory chapter. And so here we are, summer break has ended. Rumors about the girl who had shown up nearly every day for the past several days, carrying a heavy musical instrument into the school building, then staying shut up in music room number 2 all day, instead of participating in any supplementary lessons or club activities, had started to spread among the members of the sports club. At the end of last week, a delivery truck had suddenly pulled up to the school grounds. When they tried to haul in a large quantity of equipment, it threatened to cause some trouble with the school, who didn't know anything about it. Through all of this, music room number 2, which had been almost barren of anything useful aside from the piano, came to be quite busy before long. Now there was a drum set, a bass, a saxophone, and any other number of instruments. A lineup not to be outdone by music room number 1 next door. Can you imagine being the school and suddenly this room is just full of super expensive equipment? And to the trained eye, it might have been apparent that those instruments were all about one order of magnitude greater in cost than those furnished by the school. Every one of them was brought in from the Toma House's private studio, a quality of storage space that most ordinary people wouldn't even understand. And today, the final Tuesday of the month, in the completely transformed music room number 2, there was Kazusa, sat deeply in the bench, just like always. She set her fingers on the keys, stared into space, didn't move a muscle. As usual. Waiting, with her mind focused, but still relaxed. It was almost time for pre-rehearsal. From the perfectly silent hall, from the open window, the sound of a solitary guitar floated on the breeze. Still El Condor pasa? Seriously? As dizzied as she was by this utterly novice song selection, Kazusa's body still stiffened up with excitement at the arrival of what she had been waiting for. Oh, she's so sweet. She dropped her eyes to the keyboard, lightly raised her arms, took one deep breath, and the breeze carried the piano accompaniment out of music room number 2. El Condor pasa, of course. Not just following along with the sound, like before, but adding to it. And that's the thing about their relationship. She's trying to help him. She's trying to help him along. Because if you can't help yourself, you might as well help somebody else. Which is not a healthy thing to think. That's not a healthy mindset, but that's where Kazusa is stuck right now. She couldn't let the other sound be. Then the guitar stopped. After one beat, the piano accompaniment stopped as well. How awkward. Right about now, someone from the classroom to the east must be peering out the window at the classroom to the west, making a puzzled expression. However, as the heavy curtains over this window were drawn, and he couldn't see inside, he picked up the guitar again, his head still turned. And, once again, the guitar part from El Condor pasa began to play. One beat later, the piano accompaniment began. The first time that this is actually realized, possibly right now, is so funny. Like, what would you do? You're just trying to play the guitar and suddenly the piano next door joins in and stops every time you stop. It was almost as though the sound of the piano, as nosy as a certain chairman, were leading the guitar. This time, the guitar did not stop its performance. He just left it to his own ability and kept plunking along, tempo and pitch both divergent, So clumsy that he could never have looked at the song's composer in the face. And the piano, Kazusa, lectured him with sound. Lectured him on the intention of the composer, the true beauty of the song, the many mistakes in his playing. Without a word, she drummed it all into him. So this was the answer she had essentially came up with after racking her brains all that night. In order to help him get better, she's going to lead him through music, which is a very interesting decision. Single-mindedly, at the correct tempo, the correct pitch, pulling him back if he ran ahead, waiting for him if he fell behind, directing him down if he went too high, up if he went too low, setting him right if he slipped completely out of place. She continued playing, remaining patient until he accompanied her. "You're as shitty of this as it gets, Kitahara." The one who accepted this display of dedication the most readily, something that anyone who knew her would scarcely have believed, was, of all people, Kazusa herself. The connection of these sounds, done half in fun, felt incredible. She felt something worthwhile in the guitar sound that pulled the sound of her own piano down so far. In trying to teach him the guitar, she felt the limits of teaching by words. She didn't know how to convey something that she could do without even thinking about it. All she could find to say was, "I don't know, I can just play it." So Kazusa decided to use sound. That's a really good idea. And it's interesting for Haruki as well, because I would argue Haruki is not a kinesthetic learner. I would say he's probably like a sight learner, or maybe a listening learner, but he's so into bookwork, you would think he learns by reading or learns by talking to someone. But here, he's just learning by doing it, and it actually is working out pretty well for him. This way, she could correct his sound without using words. This was the practicing method that she had devised after a good deal of unaccustomed pondering. At first, she got both of them familiar with her strong point, the piano. Then, gradually, she put him in contact with the instruments that made up a band. Guitar, drums, saxophone. She would make Haruki Kitahara into a guitarist that wouldn't be embarrassed to stand on stage 3 months from now. That was the whole purpose. At her suddenly busy days, here in the final stage of summer break, Kazusa heaved a sigh of pleasant exasperation. And it's pleasant because now she has a goal to work towards. Now she has meaning in her life. And without words, of course, she is communicating with another person, which is extremely healthy for her at the moment. So, moving on to the next part of The Snow Melts and Until It Falls Again. Chapter 3, Autumn. Oh, hey, good morning, Hey, Chairman Kitahara! Yes? We got something that needs handing out. Can you come to the staff room? The collection deadline is tomorrow, actually. How long have these been sitting on your desk? Don't worry about the details. Just take care of it right away, okay? Yeah, I'll see what I can do. Sorry to put this on you again. Anyway, take these. Oh, careful, they're pretty heavy. And this is what I was talking about when I say everybody's going to be taking advantage of Haruki. Like, just because you are capable enough to do all these things doesn't mean it's right to put it all on this one person. 2 weeks after the end of summer break. It was mid-September, and both students and teachers had just about stopped dragging out the summer. Oh, Kitahara-kun, sorry to grab you like this during lunch, but do you have a minute? What, is there a problem? Yeah, a pretty serious one. Look, today's the regular library board meeting, right? Yeah, now that you mention it. Huh? But Harada-san isn't... Exactly. Hiromi's out with a cold, and we need a substitute. We need a substitute. I don't really have any connection with that, do I? Yeah, you don't. So what are you smiling for? See, again, he's just getting taken advantage of. Apparently, they're talking about some pretty important stuff today. Hiromi begged us to find someone. It's happening right now, in the library. I knew we could count on you, Chairman. You're always so dependable, whether it's necessary or not. Yes, yes. More importantly, if I'm late for 5th period, will you explain to the teacher for me? Sure will. I'll leave an answer roll call for you if you want. No, I'd rather you didn't do that with your voice. That would be so funny. Like, Haruki Kitahara, here. Haruki Kitahara, the chairman of Class 3E, was being pushed around by everyone around him. Just like always, maybe even more than before. On top of his usual work as chairman, there were the orders from the teachers, who depended on him for the past 3 years. There were the minor tasks from his classmates, whose confidence he had newly won. And, hey, Haruki, let's go. Chikashi. Of course, yet another person that needs Haruki, and you need to know when to put your foot down with these things. Haruki's really good at a lot of things. He's good at multitasking, he's good at being productive and keeping people in line, but he's bad at keeping himself in line and knowing when to say no. We set up our homepage. It's just a start, but it's something. So I was hoping we could get your opinions on some stuff. Can't the committee members figure something out for that? No way. Those guys ain't got any skills or ideas. Every single one of them said, whatever Haruki says, goes. Look, I'm not part of that committee this year. And yet, you are an honorary part of that committee because you keep dedicating your time to the committee. And on top of that, the school festival committee that had been booted up with the start of the second term had forced its way in, leaving him with almost no free time during breaks or after school. You're regretting leaving the upperclassmen alone and taking charge for the past 2 years, huh? Well, I don't think that was a good thing for the upperclassmen either, but this year? What, band practice? But you're not actually going to perform, right? So who cares if you don't show up at every rehearsal? Maybe, but you never know. That's a terrible attitude. Who cares if you don't show up at rehearsal? The whole point of a club is so you can dedicate your time to people and a team. You don't need to take his time away doing things that he's not even really a part of. Oh, like Takeya's gonna get sick or something. He'd be more likely to get stung by some girl. And you think that likelihood is low? Come on, we won't get anywhere without you. Well, let go. All right, I will. Just hang on a second. Later, Toma. Careful on your way home. Let's go, Haruki. Yeah. Of course, Toma wouldn't respond. That would be hoping for too much. Without receiving any response from Kazusa, who had been staring out the window from the next seat, showing no interest in the exchange playing out, Kitahara, emphatically not part of the festival committee, but an important part of the main staff anyway, was all but dragged out of the classroom by Hayasaka, with whom he had grown close enough to be considered good friends. Is it good friends, though? Or is it just he's really useful to somebody? For the next few seconds, a certain someone took the time to settle her breathing. Fortunately, the din that immediately followed, of the entire window-side row of desks being toppled like dominoes, did not reach Kitahara's ears as he walked down the hall. That day, in music room number 2, a tempestuous recital took place with a certain fighting spirit that had not been present for quite a while. This single piano was enough to drown out the rehearsal of the wind ensemble on the first floor, and this show of derision from the music department only served to lower the ensemble members' motivation. Today, however, the solo guitar did not mix itself in with the loud reverberations of the piano. As a result, the voltage of Kazusa's performance kept on increasing. Oh man. I mean, granted, Haruki does go to every band practice, but he can't always go to every after band practice, like band practice number 2. That's asking a little bit too much. And of course, he doesn't even know that Toma really wants him to be there anyway. So it's not really his fault this time. Of course, it wasn't because she could play more comfortably without that clumsy racket to afflict her. Nothing that positive. That yes man, doormat, opportunist, evasive bastard. She played at fortissimo so that no one else would hear her tirade. Since the end of summer break, Kazusa and Kitahara had barely exchanged a word. It was bad enough that she wondered what the point of their dramatic chance encounter that day had even been. The rest of the world probably would have understood it this way. The delinquent girl ignored the chairman entirely, no matter how cordial he was with her, how much he spoke to her. Why aren't you coming to practice? Do you understand that you have 0 time left? But the truth, well, the truth within Kazusa alone was the complete opposite, and the fact that things had reached this state of crisis was all on Kitahara. Yes, all right, Kazusa had been completely ignoring all of Kitahara's appeals to her for the past several days, but it wasn't because she refused to respond to him, regardless of what he said. As far as Kazusa was concerned, the entire problem was that he wasn't hitting the right target. Okay, well that's just silly and immature. If you want to talk to somebody, just talk to them. If you want them to talk to you, well, he is talking to you. You're just not responding. So wanting him to just be psychic and know what you want without telling him, that's just immature. That's not fair. Good morning? Whatever. Goodbye? Couldn't care less. Did you do your homework? Not even worth a glance. I want you to teach me more about the guitar. Why couldn't he just say that? You haven't improved at all. You don't know a thing. After about 20 days of teaching him remotely from music room number 2, Kazusa had hit a wall. With piano, bass, drums, she sunk in all of her own aptitude, sense, and natural genius in order to support him. But Mr. Hard-working prodigy student still didn't show any flash of uptake with any of these instruments. I mean, the only one he wants to learn is guitar. It's not really fair to be mad at him for not knowing other instruments. She couldn't get a grasp of the limits of his abilities, his potential for growth, the speed of his development. She found herself recalling how vexed she felt as a child when her friends dropped out of their piano class one by one and her social group steadily vanished. And so, Kazusa got more and more irritated. Now that she thought about it, maybe the whole thing was hopeless from the start. A coach with with no patience at all. Like, yes, she doesn't have any patience, and that's not good. But also the thing is, she's not a professional teacher. And even if she were, this would be her first student. So you don't know how to handle students. You don't know how to gauge people's levels or help them improve really fast or know how to help them improve the best. It's all an experiment for her right now. And she is doing her best and is helping Haruki. So right now she's just being hard on herself because she's used to all these professional coaches. The inadequate degree of mutual understanding that came from a lack of teaching experience, a lack of communication skills in general. What kind of rehearsal routine was this anyway? No contract, no knowledge of the mentor's true identity, no notion of whether he recognized her as a mentor in the first place. The more she thought back on it, the more it seemed to her like she had left too much up to chance, in a way that might have led the chairman to lecture her for being unreasonable. Goddamn amateur. Don't you have any sense of urgency? And in her impatience, she muttered things she didn't really mean. I mean, that's Kazusa in a nutshell. Then started to fear that what she said had been the truth in her mind, which worsened her anxiety, throwing her into a vicious cycle. Of course, Kazusa didn't realize it, that serious symptoms were sprouting up within her. I mean, they have been for a while. And again, Kazusa needs to work out these emotions. I wish Kazusa honestly would go to therapy and talk to somebody about her abandonment issues, because a lot of the stuff that she's getting into now and the feelings she has now are because of that abandonment. That the impatience, the irritation, the anger she was feeling over somebody else, when she had barely even looked at anybody else for the past several years. Good morning. You're 5 minutes later than usual today. Your eyes are red too. I've never known you to stay up late. Did you nap too much during the day so you couldn't sleep at night? Oh, or maybe you were just preparing for next week's proficiency tests? No, sorry, forget what I just said. When you assume, it's not good. Especially when you assume things about Toma. Anyway, keep your focus up today. No, hey, don't go back to sleep already. What's the point in coming to school if that's all you do? Kazusa, having to deal with this clueless yammering after finally being through with her homeroom teacher's nastiness, fell forward onto her desk in an exaggerated way, as if to say, do whatever the hell you want. I don't care anymore. You seem seriously exhausted. What were you doing last night? Whose fault do you suppose this is? She swallowed this gripe down before it could leave her mouth. Yeah, because it obviously wasn't actually Haruki's fault. And if you told him that, he'd just be like, what? He'd be very confused. As Kitahara had pointed out, she had barely slept at all the night before, engrossed in a sort of pensiveness with which she had, to this point, been unfamiliar. Brooding over pitiful Kitahara and his threefold handicap. He could hardly practice because he was so busy. The practicing he did manage wasn't bringing any improvement, and he showed no sign whatsoever of being concerned about this. We've got Sua for first period, so you should probably at least try to look awake. Do you really understand where things are? There's no way you'll be ready for the school festival at this rate. Even your little memory-making notion is on shaky ground. Even as she flagrantly ignored her neighbor's gaze, Kazusa's head was full of nothing but said neighbor. I'll have to tell him directly, huh? I'll have to shove the truth at him like I did over summer break. Since last night? No. Since yesterday afternoon? No. Since the start of this week, she had fretted and fumed more than the guy himself had, and ended up only going in circles with no progress made. But wouldn't that be way too pushy? Like the sort of thing Kitahara always does. Why should I have to do something like that in the first place? There's no reason for me to go this far for an idiot like him. Yes, there is. What is there? Shut up. None of your business. Right. Why is she talking out loud? Why is she thinking something? He's literally right there. She could just talk to him. She could just be like, hey, do you want another guitar lesson? He would jump at the chance. But both of them are afraid to talk to the other person. I mean, other than pleasantries, which Haruki throws at her every day. Think about how much I've suffered because this idiot insisted on butting in. That being the case, who could blame me for retaliating a bit? Kazusa was dead tired. That was almost certainly what led her into this inversion of priorities. Yeah, I'll let him have it. I'll point out every little mistake he makes in minute detail. I'll tell him what a shameless, hypocritical thing he's been doing. Music? I can do that. There's no way I'll fall behind this dumbass in anything that's not studying. Yeah, that's it. I'll push him so hard that he'll never be able to play the guitar again out of sheer embarrassment. Jeez, she's getting mean. She needs to get some sleepy. The fact that playing a live show was his goal was a stroke of bad luck for Kazusa. To her, failing in a recital was absolutely unthinkable. She would start her intensive practicing more than a month in advance, sparing not a second for sleep, playing and playing until no matter how rigidly nervous she was, no, even if she were about to lose consciousness, her body would be able to reproduce what she had practiced on its own. That was the norm for her until 2 years ago. She never found it painful or difficult. When it came to music and music alone, she was miles more diligent than he was, and she allowed for no compromise. I mean, that's still not healthy. You could say what you want about it being good for progress and good for practice and getting results, but it's still not healthy. Don't resent me for this, Kitahara. We've both run out of luck. That was what Kazusa told herself. That, were it not a matter of music, she wouldn't have involved herself this deeply. She was supposed to have thrown away this pride 2 years ago, but she chose not to think about that right now. Now that I've decided, it's simple. I'll take action after school today. Hey, Tolma, would you mind hanging around a little bit before you leave? Huh? And after school. Of course something has to come up because nothing goes according to plan. Granted, her plan was pretty terrible from the start, so honestly saved. Kazusa's initiative was suddenly stolen. I just want to talk to you about something, but once everyone else is left. Just the two of us? I mean, I guess so. That's what you would prefer anyway, right? What? Kitahara's invitation, delivered openly in front of everyone, completely put to waste the strategy that Kazusa had spent the entirety of their class time considering. How to start talking to him without everyone noticing, how to get him alone without causing any suspicion, and it left her unnecessarily flustered. I mean, yeah, and he asked in front of everyone, which, if everyone's immediately gonna notice. See ya, Haruki. Thanks in advance for the physics notes tomorrow. Yeah, see you. Hey, why don't you take them for once? Bye, Kitara-kun. Yeah, see you tomorrow. Tahara. But in spite of Kazusa's immense agitation, their classmates just strolled right by the two of them, exchanging seemingly habitual parting greetings with Kitahara. They showed no sign of teasing the two of them. It was clear in their faces that they were simply observing at a distance the usual scene. The chairman's futile meddling ignored by the delinquent girl, as though it were something charming. Mind locking up, Chairman? I'm heading out. Yeah, I'll bring the keys back to the staff room. See you. In other words, there was no misunderstanding whatsoever. And we know that Kazusa at this point, and forever really, overthinks everything, every little thing she has to think about, especially when it comes to how people view her, because at this point she's got a pretty big complex about it. When in actuality, it just looks like the class representative has to talk to somebody about something. He talks to everybody about things. It's really not that big a deal. So, before we get into their actual conversation, we will stop off there for today's episode. So, thank you so much for being here with me on this White Album 2 story, and I'll be back with the next chapter shortly. So until then, I hope you take care. See you.